The reality is that doing police work is traumatic, like seeing dead children, seeing major motor vehicle fatalities, seeing abuse of the elderly and neglect cases and homicides and suicides. The more and more we see that, the more desensitized we become, the harder it is for us to regulate. And I know the public thinks, well, you knew you were getting into that. Like you volunteered for that. And it's like, well, yes, we know the job, but you can't prepare the mind for the reality of what it's going to see and experience throughout the career. And so that's why a lot of people don't realize, Bob, but the number one killer of law enforcement in this country for years has been suicide.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Joe Smarro. He is a veteran of the Marine Corps and a former police officer who is nationally recognized as a mental health advocate. He has transformed crisis intervention and suicide prevention, especially for first responders. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Joe's time in the military and his time on the San Antonio Police Force, where he founded the San Antonio Police Department Mental Health Unit. Joe's experience, particularly in the area of de-escalating volatile situations, is something that we are going to be talking about at length. We're going to talk about how he got into this field and some of the resistance that he has gotten in trying to have more empathy, and the type of training he does for people in the police department with his company, SolutionPoint Plus. So let's jump into it. This is Joe Smarro. Joe, glad you're on the show, man. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Very much interested in the work you're doing. I watched your TED Talk a while back, actually. And like I was telling you before we started, when I think of, I know you're not a policeman anymore, but you were in the police force and you were in the military, and I don't think of compassion. That's not my first go-to. Almost yeah, go ahead.
I'd say you're not alone there, Bob. You're not alone.
So I was very intrigued and pleased to see that, and I know you're not the only person from that background that is going with the idea of compassion, empathy, understanding, and helping those and trying to be aware of the issues of mental health.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did another podcast recently, and the host shared with me that one of the comments was, as soon as I heard the intro of the podcast host had a guest, myself, on that was a Marine and a cop, they were immediately turned off, but they actually sat through the episode and they were pleasantly surprised and like, wow, I didn't know that this side of the world existed. And so, yeah, I'm very happy to hopefully balance it out some. And for sure, I mean, oftentimes our perception and bias and opinions is skewed by not just lived experiences, but also the opinions of media and external forces and social media. And so if that's the only place we're getting our information, we have to be very careful with that. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about anything. I'm an open book, Bob. And so I'm grateful that you are sharing your audience with me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. And let's just talk about mental health for a minute, because I think, at different times in everyone's life, they struggle with something that's going on, some sort of trauma, some sort of tragedy, grief, confusion. Everyone has issues to varying degrees. So, but when we think of mental health, we think of the more severe situations where people are really debilitated by an issue. And my feeling is that can happen to anybody. Anybody, depending on what the circumstances are. So I have to look at people that have problems in those areas at any particular time as, well, that could be me. And how would I want to be treated is really the question I ask myself. How would I want to be treated if I'm in this situation? And I think that's where I think that may be the basis of what you're trying to do, is to understand that it can be anybody. You're me, I'm you.
Yeah. I often say that mental health, mental illness doesn't discriminate. But sadly, we live in a country that who can access resources and how they access those resources does discriminate. And because we're in a country that our healthcare system, behavioral health system, is set up in a way that your level and access to treatment is proportionate to your ability to pay for it, oftentimes the people who need it the most have the hardest time accessing it, and the people with the most resources, the worried well types, have the easiest time accessing it. But even as a cop, when I was on the mental health unit, my mantra was always focus on the person, not the problem. Right? The problem is what gave me permission to have my purpose, and I loved being on the mental health unit. And people ask me, like, do you miss the department? I'm like, no, like unequivocally, without hesitation, absolutely not, no. But the thing I do miss is actually being called to people's worst moments. And not because I'm a dark sadist individual, but truly because I saw it as a blessing, that it was a gift that because of my profession, I was able to be called in when someone was acutely suicidal or floridly psychotic. And, to get to show up and really focus on them, to listen to them, to, express empathy towards them, to just humanize them and find somewhere that I could connect with them on a deeper level than just I'm this authoritative figure that's here to ruin your day. It was like, no, I'm just a human being that has a job that gives me access to you. And through that job, now I have resources at my disposal that I can use. But when I showed up, truly, it was, I want to get to know the person. The problem is why I got called here. But now my goal, my function is to really figure out like who this person is, like what happened in their life that got them to where they are in this moment, which is oftentimes a pretty dark one.
And those bad hops of the ball can just, all of a sudden, a couple of things.
And I approach it I myself am a consumer, right? I am diagnosed with PTSD and depression from the VA. I have a lot of childhood trauma, and I'm happy to get into any of it. But sexual abuse at 7 years old, endured 8 years of physical abuse from my father and his girlfriends, and essentially left home around 15-ish. Started living with friends, 16, and then got my girlfriend pregnant in high school, and so that changed my course of my entire life, as it does. And then I joined the Marine Corps, 2 combat deployments, still not getting any help, just compounding trauma on compounding trauma. And then I'm like, well, I guess I'll go be a cop because it's a pretty low barrier of entry and it kind of mimics the military. And so I'll just go do that. But it was never really like this is a calling or this. I was just like, it does not feel good. I feel like I'm just messing with people. I feel like I'm making people's lives harder. There was not a lot of it that felt really good to me until I got on the mental health unit. And then I was like, whoa, I really feel like I'm making a difference out here. But then that's also when I was at rock bottom in my life as an adult and really actively working hard to destroy my own life. And I was sabotaging myself. And I was a hypocrite for my first couple of years on the mental health unit. I showed up every day with all the greatest advice to help all these other people, but I wasn't doing it myself. And, about 13 years ago is when I finally walked into the VA after my second divorce. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but something's off. And they were like, yeah, no, we completely agree. And that's when they started tying in, the compounding effects of my childhood trauma that was unprocessed, mixed with combat exposure, mixed with the police department. And they were like, hey, you're 300 times more likely to develop PTSD because of your childhood trauma. And so my question was, well, then why did they let me in? And they're like, well, because we don't screen for that. And I was like, well, that's a problem, right? And so I think I am just one example of thousands or, hundreds of thousands of people that join the military or join police departments with all this unprocessed trauma. And what happens is as long as that stays unprocessed, it's going to eventually leak out onto our families, onto the community, onto the people we serve. And so that's my mission, is to get people to have more introspection and awareness so that they can help themselves, so that they can be better stewards for the community.
The topic of trauma comes up almost in every other area that I talk about on this show, other than some of the, the physical health issues, but even that impacts physical
Sure.
health. But it is that and gut health are the two biggest things that come up on this podcast. It wasn't something that was even talked about years ago. At least, you'd hear about you, and it was always like this super severe trauma that you would hear about. But the things that sort of compounding trauma, and I'm not diminishing your trauma at all, because those are actually severe things that, particularly the childhood abuse. But the percentage of people, I don't know what it is exactly. I haven't looked at the statistics, but there are a lot of people who have a lot of trauma that they walk around with. And, when you meet people, you're not just meeting the person, you're meeting their past and their family of origin and the things that have happened to them. So, it's easy to go, what an asshole. It's really easy to say that.
Well, we get distracted by behaviors.
Yeah.
It's easy to see someone's behavior and be like, oh, that guy's a jerk. And it's like, well, something's causing that behavior.
Right. I don't think people come in wanting to be that way.
Right.
Two things people want the most. They want love, and they want to feel safe. And if you don't have those two things, that's basically what trauma is. If you don't have those, you've got a situation where you're guarded and you're suspicious, and you're either in fight or flight. And so those behaviors are going to come out of those things. So it's an important thing to understand when you meet somebody or you're in a situation that those people have a history. You're just not meeting them in the moment. You're meeting their entire past, which, and how did, I'm fascinated by that the VA was able to get you in a direction. I had a friend that I was helping a lot who many years ago, he was older than me and he was a vet. And I used to take him to the VA for his appointments. And I spent a lot of time there, and I got to know some of the way it worked. And, the VA gets a bad rap a lot, but I had the complete opposite experience. I was very impressed with how, it was a little bit tricky to navigate online and, appointments and all that sort of bureaucracy. But when I actually got to talk to the doctors and some of the people that were there to help, it was the amount of help that was available was extraordinary. It really was. And so I just want to shout out, at least to the LA VA here in West LA. Great job. They helped my friend a lot.
Same here in San Antonio. The Audie Murphy, I advocated a lot, especially when I was dealing with older veterans, the Vietnam era. It's fascinating to me, even in like 2018, 19, and 20, they were telling us that the number one client that they were seeing was Vietnam veterans, which in the OEF world of Iraq and Afghanistan in this 20-year war, it was fascinating to me that it's like, 40, 50 years later, we're finally like now getting people help. And I think the same thing is going to happen with the Iraq and Afghanistan vets, but it's going to take 20, 30 years to convince them because they do have a bad rap. And, I don't know what that was. And I agree with you completely. Like the VA saved my life. It changed my life. And the systems suck, like the scheduling, the appointments. But like once you're actually in, my experience, and it's vast, and it's been on the medical side, it's been on the mental health side, I've been really impressed with them. The thing I don't love is the amount of hoops you got to go through to get the appointments. And then my doctor changes every time I go back. And it's like, so there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a high turnover, but they do excellent care. And so I am a huge advocate of theirs. And especially for any veterans that have never given it a shot, again, don't let someone else's experience cloud your own. And I say it's worth giving it a chance, show up and take your own experience and see how it goes. But yeah, it's certainly not the easiest system to navigate for sure. And so kudos to you for stepping up for your friend. And,
he had some difficulty navigating. He wasn't computer savvy, and he just, he had some mental health issues, not super serious, but enough that he couldn't do it. So between me and another friend of his, the three of us did it together. We split up the duties. So you kind of do need an advocate if you're not 100%, focused. But wow, it was great. I mean, I was sitting in a waiting room there once, and there was a couple there. They were Vietnam vets, and they were telling me that so something like 80% of the Vietnam vets who came back that have died were because of Agent Orange. It was a huge percentage, and they were very. Both of them had very severe physical problems. and
Right.
it brought me to tears just to see it, because I was, the draft ended right before I was eligible. So, at that time, but for Vietnam, but it was frightening to see how many people, I grew up in that era when that was happening, and it was very, well, certainly it was controversial, and there was a lot of, but the aftermath is really the thing. I mean, the thing about war is everybody gets hurt, winners
Right.
and the losers, everybody.
Yep. Yeah, and those lasting effects for sure. And even the, like the amount of Parkinson's and all this stuff that they're able to, these medical ailments that are tied to, even now, in fact, my lieutenant that I served with in Iraq, we were doing the burn pits where, you have to like stir your own shit, and they're using JP5 jet fuel and throwing it on, just massive 55-gallon drums of feces, and you're just there stirring it. And he ended up getting, I might mispronounce it, but it's like gio or glioblastoma, which is like a rare brain cancer.
Oh yeah, glioblastoma. Yeah,
Glio, yeah.
yeah.
And so they're tying that to the burn pits, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, it's not just about the bullets and the mortars and the bombs. It really is about the environment, the chemicals, just everything that you're consuming and exposed to while you're in those environments.
And the suicide rate once people do come home, because there's a hopelessness and a damage that's done that's so deep and pervasive. It's I don't know why human beings have such a hard time understanding that war doesn't work. It never has. It just never has. And it never will. And for some reason, that's the go-to when conflicts aren't resolved. And I guess you could sort of dial that down to the individuals that you've worked with over the years. It's not a war, but it's an individual
Yep.
battle between, what's going on inside somebody and versus, what the appropriate behavior in society is supposed to be. And, what you've done and what you're doing and continue to do is to act as somebody that can mitigate that situation. So let's talk about that. How you went from military to police, mental health, to what you're doing now.
It has gotten better for sure. But when I got out of the Marine Corps in 2004, the preparation for transitioning out was just insufficient. And there's really, I mean, they do like a 2-week program where it's like, yeah, here's how to write a resume. But there's nothing on the psychological side that was really going to prepare you for first of all, I tell people I will never be the combat Marine that claims to be a hero. The first time when we invaded Iraq in 2003, I was with that first push. And the first time I shot and killed an Iraqi soldier, it killed me. There was nothing fun about it. I didn't like it. Something in my body was like, that is not okay. And the fact that I got celebrated for it too. And my gunnery sergeant was hyped up, and like I got smashed in my Kevlar helmet with his, because that's how the Marines like to celebrate. And it was like, no, this doesn't feel right to me. Nothing about this feels good. And then how do you go from fighting these politicians' wars to then suddenly getting out, and you're like, now what? And how do I replicate not just the adrenaline, the amount of dopamine that you get while you're in a combat setting, again, to the point you made of where you're constantly in this like fight or flight state with all this dopamine and all this adrenaline, and you're always ramped up, to then getting out and you're just kind of, now what? And nothing will compare to your ability to find that level of quote unquote excitement, even if it's fear, but your body knows like this is addicting. And so then that's why, again, a lot of veterans fall, like I had a pornography addiction for 3 years. I learned through the VA that when you just sit and consume porn, not even for arousal or masturbation, but just have it on, it's releasing the equivalent amount of dopamine as if you're in a firefight. And so it's just destroying your brain. And I was thinking like, I'm not into anything weird. It's just, adults having sex. And, I was married at the time doing that. And I'm just like, my family's not around. No one knows this is happening. But it was still like me seeking out something that was going to give my brain that same stimulation without knowing it. And we find this in food and alcohol and nicotine and drugs and sex and all these things that we're chasing to try and get that same level of high. So then I become a police officer, where it was like, where a lot of cops were ramped up right away. And like, thinking like this is real world life and death and war and all this. And I'm just like, this isn't that big of a deal. In fact, every time we show up, people are just running away from us. That's very different from war where they're ambushing us or bringing the fight to us. In our communities, it's like, no, they're running from the police. So if anything, it was like we're bringing the fight to them. Now, I know obviously there's situations where cops get ambushed and horrible things happen to police officers. I'm not minimizing that, but it's not at the rates a lot of police officers believe. And a lot of training academies, they essentially prepare us for the reality that like you're going to die. This is a dangerous profession. Someone's going to take your gun and kill you with it because it's happened before. And so stay on edge all the time. And then you get out there and you're like, none of that happened today. In fact, nothing even close to that happened. I took like 6 reports. I had a missing person report, a barking dog call, a theft report, a domestic violence call. Like it was pretty boring. And how do you reconcile with that where you're also being told, like, go serve your community? And it's like, well, wait a minute. You just trained me for months to fear them and think everyone's bad, everyone's going to kill me. But now you want me to like serve them and do well. And it's hard for a human brain to differentiate between safety and not. And so a lot of cops are walking around on guard all the time. And even worse than that, when they get off, they still don't know how to turn it off. So then they get off and they just go sit in their chair. They're excluded from their family. They're not emotionally available. They don't know how to regulate their autonomic nervous system. So then they just stay ramped up. They're not sleeping well. It's a disaster. And so the company that I created, SolutionPoint Plus, we're a training business and we do in-person training all over North America. And it's primarily for first responders. Now we've gotten into healthcare and education and public transit, but mostly we're training public safety. And we're teaching them like, look, I'm not saying all the training you got was bad. Like, yes, we need to be prepared. Our thing is you can be both. You can be well trained for if the bad thing happens, you can have competence to know how to navigate that. And you can also be compassionate. That's not going to make you less safe. You can have empathy. That's not going to put you in danger. I proved it, right? I did 11 years on the 7th largest city in San Antonio, a large department, the 12th largest in the nation. And I had over 8,400 call outs of human beings, the sickest of the sick, co-occurring disorders, methamphetamine, barricaded subjects, guns, knives, not one use of force. And it's because of my obsession of human behavior and keeping myself safe in the process of that. And so there's a way to do it. And so we teach these concepts, but what we really teach them is about themselves. Like, why did you select this profession? We talk about ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. And it's like a lot of you came into this profession with childhood trauma that you've never processed. And that was a great study done out of Kaiser Permanente. And it was done in the late 70s. It got published in 81, was funded by the CDC in 1984, or 94, I'm sorry. But it's been around for decades and a lot of cops don't know about it. And so they don't realize the pain and the struggle that they're bringing to the profession. And they're just compounding more trauma on more trauma, because the reality is that doing police work is traumatic. Like seeing dead children, seeing major motor vehicle fatalities, seeing abuse of the elderly and neglect cases and homicides and suicides. The more and more we see that, the more desensitized we become, the harder it is for us to regulate. And I know the public thinks, well, you knew you were getting into that. Like you volunteered for that. And it's like, well, yes, we know the job, but you can't prepare the mind for the reality of what it's going to see and experience throughout the career. And so that's why a lot of people don't realize, Bob, but the number one killer of law enforcement in this country for years has been suicide. And it's not even close. It's like 3-1. The most dangerous part of our job is killing ourselves, not the public killing us.
Like you were just saying, it's like, yeah, you signed up for it, but you didn't experience it before you signed up for it.
Right. Yeah, you can't prepare.
Yeah, it's just a word or a phrase or an idea that you may have seen on TV at best. And that's not accurate either. So, those moments, this is a small thing, but I had a car accident a number of years ago. I actually hit somebody, and luckily, it wasn't a death thing. It was just, a broken arm kind of a thing. It was an older guy. And I was really freaked out when it happened. And the police officer said, "Are you okay? Do you need to sit down? Do you need to, whatever?" He was super kind about it because he'd seen it enough that he knew. And you know what? I wasn't okay. I didn't get into it with him there, but I had flashbacks of what happened. I tried to like rewrite it in my mind so it didn't happen. I became fearful of driving. I became fearful of being a pedestrian. And it took, months and months for me to just sort of be able to get back to whatever normal is. And this was minor. I mean, it was a bad thing, and I felt awful. I just felt awful. The guy went up on my hood. I didn't, it was a blind spot. He didn't have his hearing aid in, and he walked in front of me. It was a couple of different things going on. It was called an accident. It really was just an accident, and it was just awful. And that's minor PTSD compared to some of the things other people. So I just from that experience, I was like, oh, okay, now I see, that was just the tip of the iceberg of a real, strong experience. And also, when you talk about ongoing trauma, it's not, like if that happened to me every day, I can only imagine, and when you think about particularly, war is a great example because you're firing cortisol all day long. You're on high alert. A bomb could be coming in anytime. You just don't know. And so you're always at that heightened, the adrenals are just firing all day long. So how could you not have a withdrawal from that or a reaction to that? I didn't realize you'd get addicted to it, though. That was an interesting point you made.
Yeah. I heard through the VA that a lot of combat military members, they want to go back to the war zone, and they cite things like it was just a simple life. Like being home is hard, paying bills, having a family, doing all the day-to-day stuff. That's like way too difficult. But war, I felt at home. I want to go back. I felt like I had purpose. But the reality is that they're addicted to that adrenaline. They're addicted to the dopamine. They don't even realize it. Something cool the VA started doing years ago was they were taking combat vets before they would leave theater, and they would bring them to somewhere like Germany or somewhere, and they'd put them on like black diamond ski hills. And these military people have never skied before in their life. But what they were showing them is like, and they said this, that we would rather put them on something that they could get adrenaline. We know there's a good chance they're going to crash and break a leg, but we'd rather them break a leg than go home and kill themselves. And so what we're trying to teach them is through sports or through adrenaline activities that are healthy, that they can still feel alive and feel good, but they don't have to do it in a kill, no kill type of combat setting. So it's super interesting. And then another thing that comes up for me, Bob, is I heard this and I thought it was brilliant, which is, the military does a great job of preparing you for war, training you for war, like their workups, like they do real life training. And because you're either flying over, taking a ship over like I did, like you've got weeks or month to prepare, and what you're going into on some level. Then it happens and it's like, yeah, you can't prepare the mind for that until you've done it. But then when you come home, it's like, okay, I know I'm no longer in that level of danger, even if I have the PTSD, but somewhere in your mind, your body, I'm home, even if I get activated or I'm triggered by something. With police officers, they make multiple mini deployments every day. So like that call that the officer responded to on your accident, that was just another call for him, but he could have came from, again, a shoplifting call from that. So that's low level, no big deal, easy report. Then he goes to your call where it's like, we've got an elderly gentleman on the ground with a broken arm. EMS is showing up. You're shook up. You're in a little bit of shock of like just hitting a pedestrian. And so, but he's so desensitized that like, even in his mind, this is minor, where really it's not that minor. Yeah. And then from that call, who knows what call he goes to. So there's no real opportunity to prepare your mind. So a lot of these guys and girls, they think on the way in, like, okay, prepare the mind, get battle ready. But again, most of the calls, like most 911 calls are pretty benign. Like 90% of them are pretty benign. Just show up, take a report. Again, most people scatter. You're just identifying some evidence or facts, getting the story, writing a report or typing out a report, and you're leaving. And that's what most of police work is. But every now and again, there's the pursuit, the chase, the actual crime in progress, where now it's like, oh, this is the adrenaline seeking thing. This is the fun part. And what we see as fun is also the most detrimental part of the job. Because again, if we're not going to regulate and allow ourselves to come down, I sat on the Chiefs Action Advisory Board when I was on the department for 6 months. And it's basically a board of, 7 sworn members, 6 civilians. and we're just observing officer complaints, officers that are getting in trouble doing things. And so we're looking at body cams, we're looking at reports, we're looking at cell phone stuff, we're taking all the evidence we have, and then we're making recommendations for disciplinary action. But it was super interesting to me where it's like, hold on, like I get there has to be a consequence. So like, yes, this officer needs to be disciplined for what he did. Small example, traffic stop. We have body cameras. You know, everyone's watching, everyone's recording this. And yet something in that officer's mind, he lost his shit where he or she is on the side of the road, yelling and screaming, cursing out someone, maybe using excessive force to try to get the result they're looking for. And so then there's a consequence. And I'm like, yes, we need to do the consequence, but also at what point are we going to check on this officer? Because that call, that traffic stop, that's not why he lost his mind. Right. He lost his mind because something else is going on in life. And again, coming from the empathy side, it's like, I want to know what's happening at this officer's home. I want to know how they're sleeping. I want to know what's happening in their personal life. I want to know how they've been operating at work before this, because this situation, for whatever reason, was just the catalyst that like broke him in a moment. And now if we just punish him and that's it, the story that's going to be generated is, I overreacted on something. I made a mistake and now I'm getting punished for it. And then they just become negative. They have bad attitudes. They're like, screw it. This place is out to get me. They think I'm a bad cop. I'll show them. And then you have a lot of officers out there that are just pissed off and disgruntled because their own departments don't support them. They're quick to punish them, but they're not quick to support them and see when they're struggling. And they just wait for the mistake to happen. And then they hammer them and throw some disciplinary action at them. That to me is horrible culture. And that's riddled across the country in our police departments.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think about the idea of community policing, where the police, used to, this is going way back, I think, where they walked a beat and they knew the people in the neighborhood. That's a very different experience than the way it is now. I mean, the times I've encountered police in my community, it's always somebody different. I don't know them. They don't know me. It's just, it's very infrequent. But it would be very different if, and they do have, I have to say in my city where I am, they assign police to certain blocks. Like they have block captains here that live on the streets, and they have these community meetings. So there's like a point officer that comes to these meetings, and you can talk to them. Really smart idea. I mean, I haven't been there in years, but I did like that fact. And sometimes you had the opportunity to get to talk to these people and get to know them. And if you had an issue, you could call them up, right? And actually have a sane human to human discussion. So I think those kinds of ideas are really smart. I don't know if, they have the manpower and the money to do that as much as they used to, but it was, these are great ideas to go human to human rather than authority figure to civilian, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, and most police departments in the country are grossly understaffed right now because less and less people are wanting to do the job. And even in my 15 years, from 2005 to 2020, I saw a change where, and I remember they were teaching us this at the academy, but it was like when you're driving around your districts, as we call them, like have your windows down. Like talk to people, say hi to people walking by. Like that was the engagement piece, right? And because you're working the same beat, you would get to know people. Like you get to know the addresses, you get to know the people that walk, you would meet your people. And then what happens is over time, and because of, political influence and media and perception and all this stuff, the windows started going up, and proactive policing, and not even in the negative sense of like going out looking for things, right, but even just driving around. A lot of that has gone away. And I've heard this firsthand from people. I saw it on the department. We just hide now. We're going to take the calls we're called to, but you're not going to see, we're parked behind a Family Dollar. We're hiding behind a Walmart. We're parked mirror to mirror, and we're just talking to each other, avoiding the public as much as possible, because that's just going to be a problem for us. Someone's going to complain. Someone's going to attack us. And again, that's the perception from the police side. So now there's a lot of cops that just hide out, and they've got their little honey holes that they go hide out at until they get a call, and then they handle the call and they go right back to their spot. And so there's a lot less visibility. There's a lot less engagement with pedestrians, with, just people. And so oftentimes, and I know a lot of departments have these progressive units and community policing, and we have those. We have safe officers that work in the communities in San Antonio, and I know LA has a bunch of progressive stuff as well, where they're trying to do these things. But it only takes one incident where a cop has a negative outcome, and then the culture of the department quickly becomes like, oh, I'm going hands off. So-and-so got in trouble for trying to do his job, so screw it. We're just not going to do it anymore. Yeah. We're going to do the bare minimum. And it very quickly happens that way, and it's frustrating internally too, because it's like, we don't have to, I tell the cops the other side of it is there was, and this is several years back, but there was, I think it was in Denver maybe, but, a Starbucks employee, there was 2 uniformed officers inside of a Starbucks. Some of the patrons in there said like, oh, I don't like the police. I don't like the police. Told the employee of Starbucks. So Starbucks said, hey, you're kind of scaring some of our guests. Would you guys mind leaving? So it made this big news. It was all over the police media channels. And so then even in San Antonio, I hear these cops like, F Starbucks. I'm not going to Starbucks. I'm boycotting Starbucks. And I'm like, really? Like, really? Because aren't you also the ones that get frustrated when you pull someone over and the driver's like, quoting Rodney King or George Floyd? And you're like, whoa, that wasn't me. Why are you going to get mad at me for something I didn't do? I'm like, you're no different. If you're going to boycott all of Starbucks because of the decision of one employee in Denver, down here and saying it, like, that's not fair to Starbucks. That's like, why are you going to change your behavior because of something that happened states away? And I think behaviorally, this happens on both sides. We see something on the news. We didn't experience it, but we saw it. So now we're like, I don't like police. I've never had an interaction with them, positive or negative. I just don't like them because of what I saw. And it's like, well, that's not super fair either. But both sides do it, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I guess that's human behavior. It's just how we are sometimes. I was thinking about, so I do this volunteer work at it's like a homeless access center near my house. I make sandwiches there once a week, and there's a lot of mental health issues from the homeless population. There's a lot of drugs, but there's also a lot of very serious mental health people. Yep. And it's a great program, and the social workers are terrific, and they have medical care. They have showers. They have lockers if people want to use it. They have housing. They help people get housing and jobs. It's all sort of under this umbrella of this nonprofit. But one of the biggest issues, and it's a frustration for the social workers, is that some of the people, well, I don't even know what the percentage is, they don't want some of these services. They'll come and get a sandwich and a shower, but they don't want to be housed. They don't want a job. They don't want some of this stuff. And, when I talk to the social workers about it, they say, well, it takes time. They don't really trust. And some of them have serious, issues where they just can't function in a work environment or even want to live in indoor housing. Yeah. So I'm sure you've encountered this, because there is a segment of that population that has either given up or is not mentally capable of functioning.
Yeah. Or a third thing, I think, especially with that population, is it's either been so long or they've never experienced what healthy is.
Yeah.
And so part of our job on the mental health unit was we would go around, and anytime we found an encampment or, an unhoused individual downtown walking around, because we have like a state of the art, phenomenal, I mean, it's, 15 years old now, but called Haven for Hope. And it's a transformational place. And it's broken up in 2 parts. One is the compound, if you will. It's outdoor living. You get a cot, and unless there's inclement weather, then they bring you inside. But on that side, they have amnesty boxes. As long as you're there by 10 p.m., no questions asked, you get a safe place to sleep. And then the next morning they leave. But while they're there, there's people trained to do motivational interviewing. They're trying to get them admitted into the program, because once you're in the program, now they have these apartment complexes where it's like you actually get your own apartment, you get medication, you get help, you get all the stuff you need, but you have to be sober. You have to and they're going to help you come off of all that. And it was frustrating for us, where I'm like, it's so obvious in my quasi healthy mind that surely you would want that. But so many of them, we would say, hey, you want to go to Haven? And they're like, no, screw that place. We're like, why? And they're like, it's just, there's too many rules. or
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
annoying how they just keep talking to us. And I'd rather just be out here on my own. Everyone leaves me alone. Or what actually ended up happening, and we did some undercover work in there and all kinds of stuff too, is it started running almost like a prison where there was cliques, there was gangs, there was violence, there was
Mm.
rape, there, you know, for an unhoused person, everything they own is usually in their possession or on their body. And you go to sleep and then you wake up and one of your belongings, which maybe isn't even a big deal, but to you it was everything, suddenly that's been stolen. And there's no evidence, there's no proof. And it's like, so now people are like, no, I'm safer out here where I can trust one or two other people in our own little encampment somewhere in the woods. And I feel safer here than I do in these facilities. And so again, it got better and better year after year. They added the lockers, they did all this stuff, but still people were like, I don't want that life. And to me, I think it's a deeper part of their illness where it's so hard for them to understand what healthy even is because it's so far away that they're just like, this is as good as it's going to get. And I've resorted to that reality. And it's really, really sad to see.
Yeah, it's I feel the pain in the social workers.
Right.
Talk to me about it.
Another one I'll tell you about that, you know, our largest client is the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And, you know, we've been there for 4 years now and I've learned so much. And it was really sad to me just as an American citizen that I'm in these prisons. And, you know, I learned this the first year I was there, but I was talking to staff and, you know, different inmates and they were like, you know, some of these guys that have been here for 30, 40 years, the most dangerous time for them is the like month before they're going to get released. And I'm like, why? And they say because they will go and incite violence or attack somebody or do something because they don't want to get out. And I was so shocked when I heard that. I'm like, what do you mean they don't want to get out? Like they've been here 30 years. They don't want to get out. And they're like, no, because a lot of them have learned that when they get released, like, what are they going to go to? Like, what world are they going to be returned to outside of prison? They don't have a home to go to. They don't have money coming in. So this for them has just become the better option. And that broke my heart where I was like, what does our country become where a federal prison inmate in a not great place. Like I've yet to be in a federal prison where I'm like, oh, this is nice. This is like a 4-star. Like every one of them is just some dilapidated hellhole. And yet the mindset for a lot of these people is I would rather do something that's going to ensure I stay here because this is a better life for me than being out in quote unquote the free world. And I'm like, man, this is really, really sad and backwards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only upside is if you don't want to have responsibility, that's the place to go. Everything's you're told when to do everything, and
Yep.
everything's taken care of. Not in a great way, but you get a
Right.
place to sleep and food.
That's structure, and human beings need it.
And yeah, and then you also have the idea that you've been there for so long. That's what you know. Especially,
Yep.
it's like the habit of it. That there's some comfort in habit, I suppose. It's
Yep.
known. I mean, unknown is scary. Known is at least you know it.
Right.
It's a big uphill battle, and I'm glad you're doing it. It's just, it's a really special calling that you're doing. And I
Yeah, and
love.
we specifically teach, you know, de-escalation is our like expertise. So we teach like how to identify and recognize human behavior. Again, don't get distracted by the behavior. Be curious about what's driving it. So a lot of our stuff is in just like behavioral science and human, just understanding the whole human from a trauma-informed lens. So that's like a lot of what we teach, and a lot of it's funny because when we get these jobs, you know, right away that first day, there's this like, the cops are pissed off. They don't want to be there. Like de-escalation, like here we go, just more fluffy hug a thug training, and they're so mad about it. But then by the end of it, they're like truly shook. And with our company, and I'm proud of this because, you know, one of our mantras is facts tell and stories sell. And so yeah, we have a lot of evidence-based stuff to back everything we do. But we don't just show up with a bunch of graphs and fMRI data and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, we understand the DSM-5, we understand diagnostics, but that's not what we're teaching. We're teaching crisis context, human behavior, how to safely de-escalate a situation, how to leverage and utilize empathy to get the favorable result you want. Our proprietary protocol, we call it CCRTC, which is curiosity, connection, rapport, trust, compliance. And it's like, if you follow this 5-step protocol, and I wrote it in my book, Unarmed, which came out last year, but It's everything starts with curiosity which is focus on the person, not the problem, asking what else could be true. From there, you establish a connection. Connection is about relationship. It's about reciprocity. Don't see me as the authority figure. Don't fear me. I'm truly here to help you. From that connection, then you establish rapport, which is active listening. There's a science of how to effectively communicate like a negotiator. So we teach that. And then trust is about testing behavior, seeing how malleable they are. Can I get them to stand? Can I get them to sit? Can I get them to move 5 feet? Can I get them to hand me something? But before I go for my big ask, I'm always going to test their behavior. And then I go for compliance, which is my ask. And this is just a proven thing. I've done it thousands of times over years. And so that's one of the protocols we teach on the external side of how to influence behavior. But then we also do a lot on the internal side too about mind management, how to take control of yourself. Don't give power away. Don't get sucked into someone else's crisis. I don't care if they said F the police. I don't care if they said screw you, cracker, or some slang word, or they offended you. Like, you're not allowed to be offended when you're on duty. You have to be professional, rise above it, realize people are trying to get a rise out of you. Ultimately, anytime someone verbally attacked me, I just saw it like, oh, this person's really frustrated. Something bad must have happened. I can appreciate the fact that they're coming from an unresourced place right now, and they're using past experience to project onto me right now. This isn't personal. Even if they're saying, F you, Joe Smarro, I'm like, yeah, you don't mean that. You don't even know me. And so it was easy for me to deflect that away and just see the pain in them to then eventually get them to comply and do what I wanted them to do. So it's like, our biggest problem, Bob, is that nobody really knows we exist. I'm very happy that we actually just made the Inc. 5000 list for the first time in 8 years. And so like we've done well, but 99% of police departments don't know we exist. We've never done any marketing. It's all been word of mouth stuff or chasing RFPs. But because we're such a small business, like we haven't done outreach. We don't have anyone on our team that does sales. Like no one's reaching out to people, cold calls or emails. So truly no one knows we exist. But that's been the thing I'm trying to solve and why I love doing these podcasts, because you never know who's listening. And if someone's like, oh, I know so-and-so who has influence at this police department, then reach out. Right? Like we want to help more people, but it's challenging too, because a lot of police departments, they don't have good training budgets. And so then people are like, we want this, but we can't pay you anything. And I'm like, well, that's a hard business to run. So that's been the other difficult side of it too, is just low training budgets in many departments.
Yeah, our priorities can be a little skewed around this country. It's unfortunate. I was wondering, like when you talk about the actual de-escalation process with somebody, what's like you come on a situation, somebody's, they're pissed off, they're yelling, they're screaming, something's happened. I don't even think it even matters what happened. And they're, ranting and raving, and they're suspicious right off they've had terrible experiences with police. What's like the first few things that you do? I would think one of the first things, and I'm just guessing, the first thing I would do is, what's your name? I would just ask somebody their name, and then I would tell them my name, and I wouldn't use my last name unless they asked for it. That would be my first instinct. And I'm not trained in anything. I just know that when I deal with difficult people, I lower my voice to a calm voice, even if I have to pretend. And I look them in the eye, and whatever that look is of one person actually giving a shit about another, that's the look I try to give people when they're being difficult.
Yeah, it's amazing you say you're not trained, Bob, but that's that's incredible instinct, because it really is basics. And again, the science of this, though, is we know there's two things that will naturally de-escalate somebody. Their first name. It's the first thing we're given at birth is a name. So that instead of, hey, sir, or a lot of cops be like, hey, guy, or we think we're being polite, especially in the South, by sir and ma'aming everyone. And I'm like, stop saying that, right? Just get their name. And even if they're like, I'm not telling you my name, be like, all right, cool. Well, hey, my name is Joe and I'm with the police department. I'm just here to help you out. You're not in any trouble. I just want to know what's going on. Now, so we do introductions, we do first names. If we can get it, or if we already know it, we'll always start with that. Hey, Bob, my name is Joe. I'm with the police department. You're not in any trouble. I'm just here to help you out. And then we immediately go into the emotional label. So a first name and an emotional label are the two things that will naturally diffuse somebody. And an emotional label is just your opinion of how they feel. So the formula is you look, you sound, you seem. And then it's just one emotion, and then you pause. That's where most people get it wrong, is they'll do what we call stacking. So they'll say like, hey, Bob, you seem angry. Do you want to talk about it? Terrible. Because you use the emotional label, but then you followed it up with a closed question. Do you want to talk about it? We never offer binary. So do you, can you, have you, will you, are you? They're all closed. So I would just say, hey, Bob, my name is Joe. I'm with the police department. You're not in any trouble. Bob, you seem angry. And then I just shut up and I let them respond, because they're either going to say, yeah, I am angry. Da, 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 da. I'd be like, and then I immediately will validate. Wow, Bob, that sounds incredibly difficult. I imagine if I was going through something like that too, I would be angry as well, or I'd be pissed off as well. And even if you get it wrong, like, hey, Bob, you seem angry, and you pause, and they're like, I'm not angry. I'm pissed off. Perfect, right? I say, hey, thanks for letting me know. So tell me what's got you so pissed off. Let them talk. That's the open-ended question. So tell me what's got you so pissed off. You pause again, because there's actually 7 skills, and we call it more pie. So it's a minimal encourager, open-ended question, reflective mirroring, emotional label, paraphrase, iMessage, effective pause. You don't use them in that order, but that's the acronym of the 7 skills of active listening. Every hostage negotiator is using this, and the FBI has done this. They added an S for more pies because they added summarize. I think summarize is too close to paraphrase, so we don't use that. But those 7 skills, that's the bread and butter. But the skill of it is you never stack any 2 skills. So it's an emotional label, pause. They respond. Open-ended question, pause. They respond. Reflective mirroring, repeat back the last 1 or 2 words they ended with, pause. They keep talking. So there's a way to do this that they're going to just give you all the information you're needing. And then I love that you said low. We teach when we communicate low and slow, clear and brief. But what I'm actually, so my second book is coming out in about 6 weeks, and it's called The 12 Laws of Maximizing the Human Experience. And it's more, I mean, first responders will get a lot of value out of it, but it really is more for the corporate side of things. But what the brand hook for that is slow and low. But the actual slow is we first have to slow ourselves. I like that you said, I try to represent someone that gives a shit. I look them in their eye. You know, I'm in control of myself, but really what you're saying is you slow yourself down. I'm not going to react to what's happening. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to ground myself in the present moment. I'm not going to future trip. I'm not going to use past experience to make myself unsafe. I'm just going to observe what's happening, but I'm going to slow myself down. And then when I'm in control of myself, then I will respond in a low energy, low tone, and just communicate effectively. And the higher they are, the more they're yelling and screaming, the lower I go. If I walk into someone's home and they're screaming at me like, oh, heck no, F the police, get the F out of here, I'll F and kill you, all these threats, I'll just be like, hey, you seem really frustrated. Like almost to a whisper. Because what I'm doing is, without telling them, calm down, don't yell at me, you're giving orders, no one's going to respond to that. I just demonstrate the behavior I want in return, and it's just mirroring behavior. And so they will eventually start to mirror you as long as you stay in control long enough.
And it really comes down to the simplest thing is in these situations, someone wants to be heard, and they're so frustrated that they're not being heard. And the idea that someone is willing to actually listen to what is going on is probably very new for somebody who's used to being in those kinds of situations. Like, this person's actually listening to me. I
Shocked. Yeah. And just to go on the science side real quick, is every behavior we do as human beings has been habituated towards reward. So for the parents listening to this, or grandparents, if you're at the grocery store with your 4-year-old grandchild or child, and you're at the checkout and they ask you for a candy bar and you say no, this is subconscious. What they then know is, okay, I asked for what I wanted, it didn't work. So now let me go to the next card. The next card says beg. So now, like, please, can I please get it? Please, can I really want it, please, please. And you're like, no, you can't get it. So like, okay, that didn't work. Now I'm going to tantrum. At any point in that chain that you reward the behavior, all you did was say, this is how you get your needs met. Now, for a lot of these adults that represent themselves this way and yell and scream, the chances are they grew up in an environment where mom or dad or caretaker yelled and screamed to get their needs met. They in their lives have yelled and screamed to get their needs met. In their relationships, they yell or scream to get the other person to, calm down, to give them what they want. So that's all they're doing is, and what I tell cops is, volume doesn't equal violence. Just because someone's yelling and screaming does not mean they're violent. Yeah. It doesn't mean we need to overreact. So because what I see when I experience that is like, oh, they have been rewarded because this behavior has only become habituated because it's rewarded something that they need. And to your point, it's just listen. So if I can show them, hey, listen, I can listen to you without yelling and screaming and matching your energy or tone, I'm still going to listen to you. And I'll get to a point where I'm like, hey, I'll use an iMessage. Hey, Bob, I feel really confused when you're yelling and screaming or cursing at me because I'm just here to help you out. And as long as you're screaming, it's so hard for me to actually listening to what you're trying to tell me. But very calm. And they'll I don't give a shit about that. And they're cool. I'm just letting you know that as long as you're screaming and cursing at me, or I'll reframe too and say, hey, because the iMessage formula, one of them is I feel when you because. So I say, I feel confused when you're verbally attacking me or cursing me out because I'm only going to treat you with respect. And I really am here to help you out. And it makes it, I would tell people when I was on duty, I made it impossible for you not to like me or to be mean to me for any period of time. It might be a few minutes, but you're going to eventually realize like, damn, I'm not getting a rise out of this guy. Like usually when I curse out someone, they yell back at me or they want to fight me. This dude's just sitting there like totally calm and in control. This is different. And they would eventually start to just chill themselves out. But it was all by me mirroring it to them and by just letting them know like, yeah, I'm not going to react the way you're trying to get me to react.
I was just thinking about when you were talking about how you talk to these people. I remember calling a customer service thing once, and I laid, hi, this is my name, this is my issue. And the lady goes, well, before we get started, I just want you to know I'm going to do everything I can to give you what you want.
Love it.
And I started laughing. I go, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I go, your training was good. I mean, I realized that she was told to say this, but it was so smart.
Yep.
Because what am I going to do? Get mad now? You're going to try to give me everything I want, and she did give me what I wanted. So
love it. There's some police departments out of the East Coast that actually brought in Chick-fil-A to give them customer service training, and I'm like, how absurd is that? Do you know what customer service training is at Chick-fil-A? All they do is repeat back what you say, and then they say "my pleasure." That's it, and it feels good.
Like the "my pleasure" thing. I've heard.
You know you're going to get it. You expect it. You anticipate it. You're almost offended when they don't say it, but that's all it is like just acknowledging the person and then just saying like, "Hey, it's my pleasure." Like I'm glad that I was able to help you. But again, you're nailing it on the head, Bob, by saying it's basic stuff. What we tell these officers and all first responders, but what we tell them is like, saying please, saying thank you, and saying I'm sorry goes a long way, especially when you're in an authoritative position. They're not expecting it. And so just using basic manners really will get you further than you think.
Yeah, basic manners. And if you can even take it to get the other person to like you, it's got to be genuine on some level. Right. It can't be super fake.
I don't like the fake it till you make it stuff. I'd never ascribe to that. It's like, no, just actually be a good person, and then it'll be easy. It'll come naturally. Yeah. This whole like when you're, and this was a big deal for the correctional officers at the prisons. I say, listen, if you can't separate the individual from why they're here, you're going to have a long career. Because if we're really honest, the only reason a lot of you get to be in this position right now on this side of the fence, on this side of the bars, is because you didn't get caught. And they're like, damn. And I'm like, it's true. And so don't forget where you came from. And also, like nowhere in your job description in the Bureau of Prisons does it say you're responsible to punish inmates. Their punishment happened in the courtroom. Their sentencing was the punishment. Your job is to keep them alive, keep them from escaping, and keep yourself safe. That's it. And so, if they're acting a fool, if they're doing stuff, it's not on you to punish them, right? And so a lot of them have a hard time understanding, like, no, if they disrespect me, then I have to give them the law. And it's like, no, you don't. They're not going anywhere. And because it comes down to bias. And it's like, look, if you know this inmate coming in is a pedophile or he murdered his wife or whatever it is, every time you approach that person, your mind is going to be telling you, hey, don't forget what this guy did or this girl did. And so your demeanor is going to change. You're instantly not going to want to listen to what they're saying because you're like, this person doesn't deserve anything good. And so it's going to influence the way you show up for them. And even as a cop, like no matter what, I got called to horrific stuff. Again, murders, sexual assaults, horrible things. But I was able to completely detach that and say, because I call it a God complex, that a lot of, and this is human behavior, is like, who gave us the authority to decide what is good, bad, right, wrong when it comes to human behavior? And I've done a lot of bad things in my life. I've cheated on my spouse. I've lied. I stole candy when I was a kid. who's to say that that's better or worse than any of these other things? It's like the great Shakespeare quote. He says, there is no such thing as good or bad. It's thinking about it that makes it so. We think that we get to assign meaning to everything. And from that, and they're like, oh, really, Joe? So if someone, sexually abuses their daughter, you're saying that's not bad? No, I'm not saying that's not bad, but it's also not on me to punish that person for the thing they did. There's systems in place for that. And if I can't separate the human from their mistake or their choice, whether it was intentional or not, then it's going to make me have a very, very long day and a horrible career. I can see the good in all people. Now, psychopaths and sociopathic behavior and all that aside is very, very small percent of the population, like less than 1%. But yeah, even people that commit a homicide or sexual abuse of a child, there is something so deeply broken in them that they thought on some level this was a good idea to do and it's serving some need in them. I can have empathy for whatever happened in their life that got them to the place where they realized this horrible, horrible behavior was okay to do. And I would talk to people I arrested, even like they did a burglary or a robbery. And after the handcuffs were on and we're heading to jail, I'm like, hey man, listen, no judgment at all, purely from a curiosity standpoint. But what happened in your life that got you to this place today where you thought it would be okay to go rob this store? Like, what's happening behind this? And they would usually cry, or they'd be like, look, man, I caught a charge when I was a kid. I can't get a real job that pays me more than $9 an hour. I've got 3 kids I got to take care of. Like, I have to survive. And I'm like, I can appreciate that, man. Like, yeah, obviously it's a law and you broke it and you got caught. And so you have to face the consequence. But I can appreciate your desire to take care of your family. You just went about it the wrong way. But like, I'm not going to treat you different because of what you chose to do. That's what the systems are for. But not everyone thinks that way. And then, I'd get accused of being too soft and like, oh, you're a social worker with a badge and you love people too much. And I'm like, whatever. I'd rather that be my reputation than being a jerk out here just treating people poorly.
Well, that attitude is based on a false assumption that
right.
that being a quote hard ass is actually going to either change that person or change the way the world is because they're being punished in a certain way. You're actually deciding what somebody else deserves.
Right.
And sometimes when I'll talk to people and they'll say something about somebody that got something bad happen to them and well, they deserved it. You've heard that before. They deserved it. Yeah. My next question is, who are you to decide what another person deserves?
The audacity.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, because, well, they do. That's usually the answer.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a fait accompli, as they say.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, all right. Well, yeah. And somehow that makes the punishment that they've decided is okay. It's like, right. They deserve it. So, and that becomes a fact, not an opinion.
Right. And that's a very hard thing to persuade them against or argue against because, honestly, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face right now as a society with as divided as we are, is a lot of people hold strong opinions that they're confusing as facts. And then they either A, can't justify it at all as to why they even believe it, or B, they don't even know why they believe it. It's just someone else told them to believe it.
Right. Yeah.
And there's this like group think or sheep think. And it's like, I don't really know, but like, it's like protests. It's like, why are you protesting? I'm not sure. I saw that people do it. And I stand for what this is, but like, why? I don't know. They don't even know what they're doing, but it's like, it's just this like desire to belong to a group, and hate is a very easy thing to rally people with. This is, the media is, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. And it's just a lot of doom and gloom. And, I just don't think we have balance of positive story and experiences to give people different perspectives, sadly.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I just hope that we can...
That's why your podcast exists, Bob, to bring positivity.
Exactly. I hope we can get the message to a number of people that are like-minded and maybe not even like-minded and think about things in a different way. I mean, it's
confirmation bias is really what it is. And when I open a talk or something, I tell them, I am here to challenge all of your BS. And that's your belief system, because everything you believe to be true is either because someone told you or you read it somewhere. But does that make it true? What is true? And so if you can just keep an open mind for what we're going to give you this week or today, and then at the end of it, if you still are like, I don't like this dude, I don't like anything he has to say, cool. But just try to keep an open mind, because what happens is we have an opinion or a belief, and then we only surround ourselves with people that validate that. And I just think it breeds ignorance. Like, we don't have enough people willing to have conversations with humans that oppose our identity or our beliefs. And so then we just silo ourselves, and it just doesn't serve the greater purpose.
Get that a lot when you say to somebody, well, I don't see it that way. And they'll just get loud. Well, you're wrong. Well, that's not an argument to change my mind. That's just you getting louder. So you haven't changed my mind. Could change my mind. I'll listen.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So there you go. Anyway, what do we want to tell people about what you're doing? And I know you got another book coming out, and your other book and your organization. How do people find you and find things out?
Yeah, Joe Smarro on all Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Smarro is Smarro. And I've got a website, joesmarro.com. My business website is SolutionPoint Plus, all spelled out.com. And really those two places or any of the social media is a great way to connect and follow up. I do a lot of keynotes all over the country. I'll actually be in California later in a couple months, and New York. And so I do keynote speaking, and then I also do a bunch of training, obviously, writing the book. I've got a podcast as well called Truly Mental. And I'm all over the internet. So if you just Google Joe Smarro, you'll see all kinds of stuff. But Unarmed was my last book. And then 12 Laws of Maximizing the Human Experience, The Mental Mavericks Playbook is my second book that'll be coming out in about 4 to 6 weeks. Wonderful. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. And I really appreciate your time, Bob.
Yeah, and also, folks, there's a TED Talk. So
on YouTube, if you go to YouTube and put Joe Smarro, all kinds of stuff pops up: interviews, TEDx, even the documentary's on there right now called Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. HBO bought it for 5 years, but right now it's on YouTube for free. It won an Emmy in 2020. But if you just look up Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops on YouTube, it's a full 96-minute feature, and it shows the work that me and my partner did when we were on the police department.
Love it. Have a fantastic day. I really appreciate your time, and
thank you, Bob.
Best of luck to you and your organization. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Me well.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. There's a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Joe Smarro for being on the show. You can check him out at joesmarro.com and type his name into YouTube. You'll find all kinds of great stuff. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.